B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some oddities of the Bible and maybe some of our favorite stories. And we'll have that right after these important messages. Hey parents and young adventurers, are you ready to embark on an extraordinary journey? Introducing the adventures of Ben and Travis and the Worry Coaster, a thrilling ride through the ups and downs of mental health in our new children's book. Join our dynamic duo as they navigate the twists and turns of their emotions while discovering the courage to conquer their worries. Pre-order your ticket to adventure now at benandtravis.com/books and be among the first to embark on this roller coaster of resilience. Let's turn worry into wonder and empower kids to embrace their feelings with bravery and hope. Buckle up. It's going to be an unforgettable ride. I'm Travis Creasy, the campus minister, preacher at Riverside Church, and of course, campus minister at Riverside Christian Academy in Fayetteville, Tennessee. Ben Hayes, all-pro counselor, three-chord counseling, preaching, pulpit minister at Highland Park Church of Christ, and anything else that I can annoy him into doing, although he returns the favor many times. Will, the youth minister at Highland Park Church of Christ, working with Walk for Water, and once again, anything that we can talk him into. These guys are open to do anything for the Lord and His kingdom, and maybe some other things as well. But Ben, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Had a pretty good week. We had spring break, and so wore ourselves out a little bit, doing a few things. We didn't go as far as Will went for spring break, but we got to drive up the Trace and just see all the different waterfalls and creeks and different stuff all the way up. Eat at Loveless Cafe one day. Spent a lot of time in the backyards playing with the kids in the neighborhood. And I worked my other jobs, even though we were on spring break. So, but it's been a good week and glad to kind of be back in the routine again.
Will?
How about you, Will? How was Savannah?
It was good. Yeah. Trying to teach Amy about our historical roots. You know, like any good
an abolitionist
That's right. We did
museum.
Yeah. Which she thought I did not partake in any alcoholic beverages. But there was, the whole prohibition, all that. And there was a speakeasy that was in a hidden wall. And she got to see how they would hide in the back of buildings. And she was like, Dad, this is incredible. And Lindsay looked at me and said, this was probably not a good idea to bring a 6-year-old to this. So
it was a part of a museum, not an abolition. Sorry.
It was, prohibition. It was a part of a museum. It wasn't, we were not taking our 6-year-old daughter to a speakeasy in Savannah. So that was just how you had to exit the museum. It was included in a package of a tour. I can justify it 1,000 ways if you would like me to, but it was good over there. So neat place. Shout out to credit card points for the free trip. So if you want a link to a sign-up bonus, hit me up because then that gives me more points.
Exactly. Well, this episode is brought to you not by anything you can get at the Speakeasy, but magicmind.com/BAT20. You can get up to 48% off of your first subscription. It's easy to cancel. You're not going to want to do that. I've enjoyed it. It's been great for me, and it's probably why I'm talking so fast right now, because I'm just so in efficient mode for magicmind.com. But Ben, as I mentioned in the intro, Will, Ephesians 3:20 says, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, and just think about our crazy imaginations, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ. And then earlier in Ephesians, he talks about how we are his workmanship. I just got to thinking about this. I did the Shine Youth Rally, basically elementary youth rally at Southside Church of Christ in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And I just gave you the idea I'm not from Shelbyville because they say Shelbyville. And just like Fayetteville, I give away my not being from around these parts. But I thought about this, and I thought about what a crazy image it would have been. I'm thinking about Jericho, and here these big, huge walls are, and these tent dwellers, the Israelites, show up, right? And we know they're already afraid because of what God did to Egypt. So they know what these tent dwellers through the power of God are capable of. But I just think about that odd image of here are these guys with secure walls, and here are these guys in tents. And then not only that, they begin to march around the walls and begin to blow trumpets on consecutive days, and being afraid of those guys because they already knew. So I think about images like that. And so what are some that you don't have to go into a whole lot of detail on that? What are some things like that, maybe that from a different perspective, or maybe guys like us who study the Bible all the time, oh, that's that story. But man, really, when you think about seeing that, either from the Jericho perspective and even the Israelites' perspective, that's just not a story that I think Moses is going to sit around and come up. You know what would be crazy if this happened? It's just so outlandish. Of course, Jesus raising from the dead in itself is pretty wild. So either one of you, if you got something in that neighborhood or in your own life even.
When you said in your own life, like this is one thing that as I've continued to grow up, you always hear the phrase hindsight's 2020, and that has become different to me in the sense of you look back and go, man, things really did fall into place. And one thing that happened with us is when we moved to Highland Park in 2016, you kind of wonder why are we doing this? Like, why are we moving here? Like, it feels right, but I'm not sure that it's ultimately like, is it the best decision or not? And after we moved back to Highland Park, Lindsay lost her grandmother, her dad, and her cousin, all within a year and a half of each other. And so like I looked at that and I go, was God actually preparing us for something that was ultimately going to happen in our future that we never even saw coming? Because when we moved in 2016, there was there was nothing that was foreshadowing that was going to happen. Nobody had been sick. Nothing had happened. It had all just kind of been real quick in every process. And so I think over my life since, I knew that God was always working, but since 2016-ish, and seeing things pan out the way that they have, it has become not odd, but I guess you look at it and go, I don't even know that surprising is the word for it. But I guess I just look at it and I see that God is doing things and I go, man, that's really intriguing that we ended up back here and then all of these things happened and it allowed us to serve God and serve our family in a greater aspect than what we would have been 4 hours away. And so I think there's just been, I try to see God more in the odd things, or, so many people go, man, it must have been just great coincidence that things panned out this way. And I'm going, but was it, or did God really allow things to just happen? So I think that's been, not that it's odd maybe, but it's just been very interesting to look back on my life and go, man, there are some very interesting things that happened, and now I'm able to see the benefit of those things. And I just go, to me, there's no other answer than God, and so that's just been kind of cool and unique, odd, kind of all those put into one, I guess.
There's been several things. I heard the tail end of Will's statement there, but there's been times, obviously in my own life, where it's like, why did this not work out a certain way? And then all of a sudden you end up in a place where you're supposed to be. So I think some of that with us, I mean, one of the times that I've talked about a few times is we had been in youth ministry. We had gone into preaching at Eva and loved the church in Eva, enjoyed being there for 2 years. I remember we prayed one night, or maybe for a few nights, for a while we were praying about whether to go back into youth ministry or not. We were missing it. We loved it, but we really weren't pursuing it. And Highland Park called, and they just said, we're looking for a youth minister. We were going to see if you would consider, doing that. And so we kind of hung up the phone and said, I don't know that I want to do that, but I feel like after that prayer, after we've prayed about this for a few times, it might ought to be something we check into. So we went in with, kind of some suggestions and thoughts, like if we're going to go, here's kind of what we would, want to do and need to do, and everything kind of fell into place. And we ended up here at Highland Park as the youth minister for several years, and all in all, been here, I think, almost 17 years now. And so it obviously worked out beyond what we could ask or imagine in that. And so, just seeing those sorts of things like you've talked about, like you were talking about with Jericho, or, other situations in the scripture where, like, Moses runs away for, 40 years. He's 40 years old. He's got it all working for him. He's in Egypt, seemingly has this life planned in front of him. And then he finds himself on the run. And 40 years later, so he's like 80 when God shows up and says, I want you to go back to Egypt. I guess I can understand why it's like, I'm 80. You really want me to go back? Like, I'm the guy you're choosing to go back there? I'm kind of trying, I'm sort of settled down here. It's one of those weird moments, but you can, I think Moses probably assumed God was done with whatever he was going to do with him. And then he still had a whole 40 years ahead of him of dealing with the people of Israel and of course, becoming the hero that he is of the scriptures. And so sometimes God uses us in some really interesting ways, even when we think he can't. So
I think it's interesting to be aware, to be looking for God in every circumstance is a huge faith thing. But yeah, I mean, if I'm at 80 years old, I'm thinking I'm closing out. Like, obviously I'm done. He ain't got nothing for me anymore. And God shows up. Oh no, only the top 3, if not the major story of the entire Old Testament. Yeah, that's going to be you. Yeah. We got something?
Well, I was just going to, like, odd things that popped up scripture wise. Balaam and the talking donkey, like, it's just, you look at that and go, there's a donkey that sees this angel. There's stories like that I look at and go, man, there's cool things that you can learn from that. Another one that's really odd to me is I wonder how Noah felt, building this big ark, and everybody's just looking at him going, you are utterly ridiculous and out of your mind, and I think sometimes it makes me feel a little better to know that God called people to do some really weird things, or what the world seemed to be weird. And then I know in the last podcast, Ben, you mentioned Hebrews 11, and then you find those people that did odd things being those heroes of faith. And so sometimes I think they're cute VBS stories. I was talking to a preacher friend that they did a whole series on what you thought you learned in VBS, because it was like, we're actually going to take the story and we're not going to dumb it down to a kindergarten level. And there's some really odd things that have happened, but some really powerful lessons in those.
I keep falling back on James 1:16 and 17. Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. And just speaking to y'all's story, even things that in the moment we may not think are perfect or good gifts, God's able to take those things and redeem them. Certainly the cross was looked at very differently in the first century than it is now. But the question of the day, here we go. We're talking about oddities, right? Question of the day, which is more likely to be real? We ready? You ready for this? More likely to be real. I mean, we live in a day and age where the government's like aliens are real, and our life is so crazy that nobody even batted an eye. Right? UFOs terrified me as being knows. Back in the day, I'm not too sure.
Unsolved mysteries.
Bigfoot, the Yeti, or the Megladon, the ginormous shark.
Are those three things, or are those
going two?
You're doing Yeti and Bigfoot together, right?
UFOs are real. Okay, so right. Which one is more likely to be real? Bigfoot, aka Yeti.
Okay,
those are one and the same. There'll be somebody out there like, "What? They're different." I don't care, nerd. Or is the Megalodon, the big shark, Meg? Ooh. Are they real, and are they in existence today? Which one's more likely? I guess I'm not asking yes or no.
I think more likely. I'm going with the Megalodon.
Okay.
Like I feel like just because the ocean, like we ain't figured out what's in the ocean.
A lot of unknown. That thing is,
I mean, and my issue, and this is my big issue with, we can get into the moon landing and all that stuff too, but
Ben's got to go.
Like it's like we got legit cameras around the world. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they can take some incredible pictures from outer space of our world, and all we get is a bunch of blurry pictures of the Yeti. I mean,
yeah, I have a hard time. Like, I spend a lot of time in the woods, and I've been in the woods where I got friends who claim they've seen some weird things out there, and then they don't seem to be just trying to pull my leg. But I have a hard time thinking with all of the very detailed trail cameras that we have and the ability of drones and all sorts of other things to think that there is actually a Bigfoot or a Yeti out there and we've not got a good, solid, decent picture of it. I find that very hard because cougars are hard to find and they are very good at hiding, but they're on trail cameras and people have pictures of them. I think it's hard, but there are places in the ocean we ain't been and we can't get to.
And I ain't going.
And I ain't going.
Places I'm not going. Right.
And there's things that can go by you at the bottom of the river and you don't know what you've just been hit by. So think about in the ocean, how dark it is. I think there's more of a chance that there's some things in the ocean that we have never discovered, never seen, or that there's a giant Megalodon, because there's some big old catfish at the bottom of the Tennessee River that people have just bumped into when they were diving, like they claim were nearly the size of a car because they just sit down there and eat the entire time. So
the only caveat I have is both Ben and I went to Freed Hardeman in the early 2000s, and there were plenty of Yeti-like creatures running around on that campus. And I won't clarify those statements, but nonetheless. Question of the day. Hit us up in the comments if you've seen this question. I'm sure we have got plenty of takes on that question. I'm pretty sure my wife and our security guard at school firmly believe that there are Bigfoot, there are Yetis. I'm going to the Bigfoot Museum here in a few weeks because my son is absolutely obsessed with them. Over in LJ, Georgia, going over there, hanging out, checking out. But either way, thank you for joining us. I'd love to do more podcasts like this one going forward, but we'll see. If you got a podcast idea you want to hear us jaw about, hit us up, hello@benandtravis.com. Other than that, you guys have a great rest of the week.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.